Record. So welcome everybody to our speaker series for World Usability Day and World Usability Initiative. And my name is Elizabeth Rosenzweig, and I am the founder and director of World Usability Day and World Usability Initiative, which I will explain in 2 minutes what that is. Today we have Whitney Hess. We'll be having a fireside chat. We'll go back to you in 1 minute, Whitney. And I'm just going to go over a few things. So first of all, I'm going to share my screen to show you. So for those of you who don't know, I can't imagine you don't know what World Usability Day is, but World Usability Day is been going on now for 20 years, and it's always the second Thursday in November. And the point is really to it's really to share the message that technology should work for people. Honestly, that is the crisp bottom line. But I like to follow that up with saying, and technology should never make someone feel stupid or get them to do things they don't want to do. So that's what we're about. And our theme this year is designing for a better world. And what you are in right now is our speaker series. So our speaker series, where somebody asked if we're going to be recording this. Yes, we've got a channel, and you can join it. And I'll put the link in. But we've got the speaker series here, and then we've got all sorts of other stuff. Just so you know, our speaker series is here, and this will go there. But we've got all sorts of media that we have from the last 20 years. So for example, the first year we were actually on CNN. When we say we, I mean me, but you, yeah. And then 2 years later, Bill Gates actually gave us a promo. So there's quite a lot going on. And what we've launched 3 years ago, and now this created the board, is the World Usability Initiative. And that is now the blanket organization. And World Usability Day is one of the activities. So another activity is the speaker series, in which we are having dialogues or looking for people, let's say, from the global South who are underrepresented in certain, design and research areas that we would like to help bring to the forefront and have dialogues and have conversations. And so we've done a series of designers in Ukraine, UX through Arabic eyes, and let's see, UX of climate change, all sorts of stuff. So that's some of our work. We are looking to connect with the United Nations. Some of us are involved with getting World Usability Day on the United Nations calendar. And then the other last one I just want to make everyone aware of is the Design Challenge that is actually sponsored by HCI International every year. They give away 3 awards and they work with us. We have a jury. So what's great about the Design Challenge is, it was just announced. So feel free to go and see what it's all about. It's not just for students, although graduate students in user-centered design programs who have capstone projects are certainly good candidates, but we've had designers who run their own companies also submit. So that's the big stuff about World Usability Day. And then I just want to go over a little bit for 1 minute of our code of conduct. So we are user experience professionals. So to me, that means we respect everyone's experience. So there's no such thing as an experience that someone's having that's not valid. We might disagree, but that doesn't mean their experience is not valid. So our code says we respect everyone's experience, treat everyone with dignity, and maintain professional tone. And the one I really want to emphasize, especially for this, is to provide a positive place. So for example, when we get into discussions, we may or may not agree with each other. And honestly, that's fine, right? Like, as long as we are respectful. And so I know, and this works for me, and I'd like to sort of ask others to try this as well, is when you want to comment, so start with something positive and then move into anything that's critical in a positive way. So for example, one way to do that would be, I'm saying, thank you everyone for coming. And I absolutely love that you're here. And we are trying to create a dialogue. So at a certain point, if you feel comfortable turning on your camera, I would love it if you did, but you don't have to. And that is pretty much it. I will put this code of conduct in the chat just so you guys can refer to it if you need to. And then let's see, I think that's it on my end. Also the other thing for those just joining is please share your location in the chat. And then without further ado, I will introduce Whitney, but actually I want you to introduce yourself. And then I'll just say two things and then we'll jump into the framing of what we're here to talk about. So I'll just say, Whitney, I'm super happy to be in this dialogue with you. I've never done this with you before. I know we've sort of chatted, say, in social media or like, sort of coexisted on the same wavelength. So it's super exciting to be here with you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself and then give us the framing, what it is we're here to talk about. And then we can go into our dialogue. So
sounds good. Elizabeth, thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here. What an incredible community you have. And I am so grateful to all of you for taking the time out of your day to be here. For some of you, it's evening, and I'm very, very grateful for that. So I'm here to chat about a topic that has been of particular interest in the last 6-8 months or so. I am by no means an expert on any of this. That's my disclaimer, but it's something that I'm passionate about and I'm learning about. And so I'm feeling compelled to share about it because I think that this is really important and something we need to be talking more about. So for some context about me and who I am, I was a UX practitioner for many, many years, over a decade. I had my own consulting business. I work with clients around the world. I have a master's in HCI. I am very much in this world. And 10 years ago, became an executive coach. So I shifted from consulting into coaching. And what I am focused on doing now is supporting leaders and teams.
And happy World Usability Day.
Sorry, that's it's okay.
Webinar that we're God, I'm just going to mute myself.
It's all good, Elizabeth. This is why we do Fireside Chat. It's very cash. So I support leaders and teams in identifying their career aspirations, in identifying what communication and interpersonal challenges they may be facing. I help people to design their careers to accelerate whatever mission they're on or identify what that mission may be. And as I think Elizabeth and I will be chatting later about, I've had this catchphrase, tagline, whatever you want to call it, of putting humanity back into business all along the way. That has not changed. And I occasionally will have people now saying things to me like, oh, well, when you left UX, and I don't see it that way. I don't think I ever left UX, nor do I think it's a thing you can ever leave, by the way. Sorry for anyone who's trying to get out.
I'm with you.
You can maybe stop getting jobs as a designer, as a usability consultant, as the expert, the subject matter expert. That's what I did. I stopped taking those jobs. But the teams that I support are either UX design and product specific teams, or they are people who align with our values, who want to do things in human-centered ways. And so I very much see coaching as an extension of that work. And the topics that we're going to talk about today are related to that humanity and how we can infuse that into our organizational cultures and take more personal responsibility for that in a a framework. So Elizabeth, I'm wondering if I should jump into the discussing the topic, or if you're wanting something else of an intro from me.
No, I'll just have a few phrases and then we can go over. So somebody put in is the Fireside Chat a Q&A. So it's what you see, right? Like this is the Fireside Chat. The Fireside Chat, and Whitney and I talked about this. So I'll like riff off of that for a second. So we all spend. So I know somebody is requesting an AI companion at the moment, and I'm not gonna say yes now, but we'll see later if we change our mind. I really want to just go human as much as humanly possible. Okay. So anyway, the idea with the Fireside Chat is, I guess, it is a more human experience in a certain way because it's a conversation. And then will we ask each other questions? Sure, yes, we have prepared questions to ask each other. But if the conversation takes us in a slightly different direction, and we don't get to all the questions, like that is also fine. So the theme of World Usability Day is designing for a better world. For those of you who know me, that's my life's work, and Whitney, and again, I don't want to characterize you, but I feel like that's the vibe I've caught off of you as well. So,
very much.
And for years and years and years, I was very focused on the United Nations and the Sustainable Development Goals, and they haven't hit their mark. We're supposed to be there at 2030, and the halfway check was we were not even close to halfway. So it made me kind of think, well, are the Sustainable Development Goals actually the right thing? And then what's fascinating, because part of what I feel like I live my life is always in this design research mode, right? Like if I don't know the answer to something, I'm just doing the Rilke thing of like living the questions until I know. And there's a few I've been living with for a long time, but the Sustainable Development Goals are not doing what they had hoped to do. And when I was at a conference virtually in Cape Town, South Africa, and I literally remember saying, what do you guys think about the Sustainable Development Goals? Which ones should we start with? And everyone in Cape Town said to me, why start with the development goals? Why don't you just ask us what's going on? And I was like, yes. So Whitney, you came up with something I had never heard of. And that's sort of my segue to get, you to explain.
Okay. Great.
What it is. And then we'll take it from there.
So thank you, Elizabeth. And the point that you're making about living with the question is exactly what led me to coaching, because it's not like I was looking to stop being a UX practitioner. That was never the goal. I absolutely loved what I did. I loved my clients. I had a successful business. I was going all over the world doing this work, but I was holding a question around, how do I give more of the responsibility to the organizations that I'm supporting, rather than be the consultant where it's like hot potato, your problem, and now I have to solve it. I devise a solution, I hand it back to them, and they say thanks. But we haven't addressed the thinking that was causing the problems in the first place. And so I was holding that question. I actually wrote on a Post-it note that I put on my computer, no deliverables. And it was a challenge to myself of what would this work in user experience in HCI look like if I was not selling deliverables? How would I live from that place? What would my contributions be? What would the client be buying? What would they be seeking? How would they be measuring my impact? And so it was holding that question that led me to eventually hearing about coaching, getting curious about it, discovering that there's a whole profession just as mature as ours, with associations around the world and certifications and accreditations and all the things. And then now it's been 10 years and it's led me down this incredible path. not dissimilar from what happened when a group of people gathered together in Europe, mostly in Scandinavia, in 2020 with this question of how do we make progress on the Sustainable Development Goals when there are large corporations and governments that are behaving in ways that are impeding our progress? How do we do it? Because it isn't just enough to have set the goals, it turns out. If your behavior doesn't change, you can't make progress towards the goals. So I think I just want to step back for 1 minute and give some definitions around some things, just in case people don't know exactly what we're talking about, which is fine, because 6 months ago, I didn't have much clarity on what all of this was either, and I'm still getting there. So we're using a lot of terminology. I just want to name what this is. So the Sustainable Development Goals, which is sometimes referred to as SDGs, are a framework that all United Nations member states came together in 2015 and mutually adopted, that provides a shared blueprint for creating a better world, the theme of this year's World Usability Day. And that framework contains 17 SDGs goals that are this urgent call for countries, both developed countries and developing countries, in partnership to work on making progress towards together. And they include things like no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being for all, quality education, gender equality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what we have found in the most recent report, which was a 2023 report, what Elizabeth was just referencing, we are halfway through. So 2023 is halfway between 2015 and 2030, which is when the goals were set for. So we have 6-7 years left. The report that was released by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs showed that not only have we not made progress toward these goals, we've actually gone backwards in several categories.
Yeah, right.
It's scary, right? None of this should surprise anyone, because you just have to look outside or go outside or see what's happening in your communities to know that these are systemic issues, and they're getting more and more exacerbated over time, and it's a global problem. And so this group came together to create what they have named the Inner Development Goals. Now, at first, this is not a group that had any affiliation with the UN. This is a group of marketers and researchers and academics who formed this collective to create this open source framework that they called the Inner Development Goals, to address what they saw as the impediments towards making progress for the Sustainable Development Goals, which is people issues. No surprise to any of us in the field that we're working in, because we're well aware that progress in our organizations is not impeded by lack of knowledge of usability best practices, for instance. It's impeded by leadership challenges and egos and communication breakdowns, etc. So this group came together and they said, what are the human inner capacities that are required to address these collective global challenges? And what they developed was a set of 5 dimensions with 23 skills within them, and naming, and this really isn't new, but putting it together in a framework with, interestingly, a visual design that matches the iconography of the Sustainable Development Goals. The very smart thing that they did because they're marketers, was they hired the design firm. This is an independent group. They formed a nonprofit, and they hired the designers that the UN had hired to do the iconography for the Sustainable Development Goals, to create a companion set of icons for the inner development goals, to create the appearance of them being related. This is 2020. And then we all know what happened in 2020. A lot more people got online and they started a movement. There are now 500 hubs around the world, and that number is probably outdated because a woman who I know who helps run these hubs or organize these hubs said that there is one new hub being created every day. So that 500 is probably even more now. And they're self-organized, and it's often by geographical location, but there's also like interest groups, like there's an empathy hub, and there is a finance hub, and there is a climate hub, and a neuroscience hub, and things of that nature, different special interests. And this is growing and growing, not dissimilar from the kind of community that we are in right here. And we're seeing that people want to gather together and discuss these skills and these traits. And because it's open source, and because it's very much emerging and still kind of in process, any one of you, anyone who joins a hub, anyone who attends any of the webinars or events or conferences that the Inner Development Goals nonprofit puts on, can participate in contributing to and refining what these traits are. And it's of particular importance that people around the world get involved, because it was a European group of mostly white people who created the first set of 23 skills, and they are determined to ensure that it reflects global cultures. And we know that different cultures have different value systems. And while we all may place value on humility, for instance, I don't need to tell you, different cultures amongst us value humility more highly than others, for instance. So how we come to an agreement around what these skills really are that leaders in corporations and government agencies around the world need to possess needs to be a global conversation. So I'm wondering if we're at a point now, Elizabeth, where maybe I should just name what these inner development goals are. I've kept you all in suspense this long.
Well, I did put in a link, but I just was merely trying to provide like a drop in the bucket. So
great.
Keep going.
So I'm just going to name them, and then perhaps we can have more of a dialogue around whatever is coming up for you, Elizabeth, around this, once I've named where this framework is thus far. Again, it's in progress, but as of today, there's 5 dimensions. And they're called being, thinking, relating, collaborating, and acting. And there's 23 skills that are contained in each of, not in each, but across these 5 dimensions. And so the skills that are within the being dimension, which is relationship to self, are inner compass, integrity and authenticity, openness and learning mindset, self-awareness and presence. In the thinking dimension, which are cognitive skills, we have critical thinking, complexity awareness, perspective skills, sense making, and long-term orientation and visioning. In the relating dimension, which is caring for others and the world, we have appreciation, connectedness, humility, and empathy and compassion. In the collaborating dimension, which are social skills, we have communication skills, co-creation skills, inclusive mindset and intercultural competence, trust, and mobilization skills. And then finally, in the acting dimension, which is enabling change, we have courage, creativity, optimism, and perseverance. And to give you a visual, I was very fortunate to attend the annual Inner Development Goals Summit in Stockholm this past October 2023. And just to give you a sense of the scale of this thing, there were 1,500 people in attendance. It was their second annual event, and they had 10,000 people attending online. So this is gaining some traction, which is why I feel so excited to share it with all of you. Anyway, they had these cool cheat sheets. So you could see that the sustainable development goals are up here. You can find them online on the UN's website. And then this is what the inner development goals look like. And then I got this really fun thing that looks like the paint chips that you get at like the I don't know, when you go on to paint your walls or whatever. And it actually has, it's a whole deck of cards that have all of the dimensions in them. And then like self-reflection questions on each one, because the intent is for us to take personal responsibility. Like, which of these things do we know that we're excellent at and we can support others in building? And which of these do we know we could use some work? Like, for instance, we were talking about forest bathing earlier, and I made the quip that forest bathing is not when you go for a walk in the woods and you're listening to an iPad.
Right, exactly.
That might be the skill of presence, might be the thing to work on there, which they define as the ability to be in the here and now without judgment and in a state of open-ended presence. So they've got definitions that they're working on, but again, this is open source, so it's really up to all of us to bring our perspectives to it and help shape it.
Okay, that's amazing. So I did put a link for the SDGs, and I put a lot of links in the chat, but the end for
Great.
the SDGs. And as I was doing that, I thought, oh, when's the next one? I got to go to the next one, but the summit. But
the summit is in October, and it's incredible. I cannot recommend it highly enough. I mean, it is obviously a privilege to be able to get to Stockholm for a week, and it is a week long. There's a 1 day kind of TED Talk style, like where you're looking at a stage and they're lecturing, so to speak. But then they also have a day that's all workshops where you spend a half day in multiple locations. And then they have a day that's more like a co-working style where we're coming together and we're doing facilitated design sessions and co-creation. It's very experiential and very smartly designed. So I think for this crowd in particular, it would be a big hit.
Wow. I mean, already, so I know you and I talked about this a little bit, and I did a little research before this session with you, and I'm already excited about this. But just in your little talk, I feel like I sort of got into it even more. And what I love about this is that it's bringing, well, the human side, which I know is your thing and my thing, into solving, as I like to say, the world's biggest problems. But I think that always starts with ourselves. Having that be number one makes tons of sense to me, because
exactly,
like, you can't forget the analogy of you're on an airplane and the air masks, you know, and you got to put yours on first before you help someone else. Yeah, that's the survival of the fittest point of view from my but the thing is, we share this planet and we're not doing a good job. I just want to emphasize on the sharing part at all. Not to get too critical, yada. I mean, we do a lot of good. We do a lot of good for each other, but I feel like we really scratch the surface as a species for helping each other. and so this kind of thing really helps bring it back, because the SDGs, I think, were altruistic, although they were written by the UN, my experience in looking at them is that the global South maybe weren't as involved as, and that's
Totally.
kind of the usual story, and that's kind of the struggle with, you know, with somewhere like the UN, and not to go down that road right now, but more the one of, it starts with us. It always, always, always starts with us. Like, so maybe we'll tease that out for a minute. Like, what are your thoughts? Have you sort of dug into that first one with any other, say, connection to UX, connection to coaching? I mean, I can sort of see where you can go, but like, tell us what you think. We'll just go through each one and talk about them a little, and then we can open it up.
Okay. So I absolutely want to respond a bit to what you're saying about the global South, which is already, I think it's very healthy with any of these frameworks to ask, okay, who is this benefiting? What are the assumptions are being made here? Whose perspective is this really perpetuating? And that's why I want to name, and will continue to name, one of my biggest reservations with this is its origin in Scandinavia and with a group of primarily white people.
Yeah.
They are very aware that this is a huge limitation to the framework, and currently are making a lot of moves to make the global South be the leader of this movement moving forward. It's not just a matter of, oh, and we'll be sure to accommodate them, right? This is like, if we're talking personas, they must be the primary persona, because we are well aware that the global South is in so much more harm's way when it comes to climate change than anywhere where most of us are sitting right now. Okay, we're aware of that. So to that end, I just saw this earlier that there is an important event coming up in Costa Rica. I'll find it and I will throw a link in. So, okay, yeah, it's the United Nations Development Program, talking about why Costa Rica is the place to start the Inner Development Goals movement, and where the IDG, as it's called, manifesto is being written. So I will share a link to that.
Okay. And somebody just posted another link, which we can go into in a minute. But
awesome.
I take back my question based on what you just said. I retract my question about dealing with these one by one, and now
it's gonna take some time, but I do want to respond to what you said about it starting from within. Okay, so to give you an example, let's say a client comes to me for coaching, and in our first conversation they say, oh, my team, they are so dysfunctional, they don't listen, they can't get along, they're lazy, they don't check their work, they're sloppy, this guy is just nuts, you know, everything that the person's saying is about everyone else's problems. It is an immediate indicator to me that there may not be an opening for coaching. Okay, and my first job in a preliminary conversation with a prospective client before we've decided to work together is to determine whether there is an opening for coaching. Not dissimilar from what any one of you who are working in UX and design and HCI, HCD have to do. We have to see, is there an opening for a human-centered process here? Or instead, are they going to tell you, you don't need to talk to users, you're the expert, you figure out the right way to design the thing, right? If there's no appetite for it, how successful can you be? You could be the best on the planet at what you do, but if there isn't fertile ground for that work to take root, nothing is going to grow. So similarly for me with coaching, I have to assess in a relatively short period, is there any self-awareness here?
Right, right,
And if the person is only talking about what everybody else is doing wrong, and they're not saying, you know, I'm noticing I'm tired, I'm getting burnt out, I'm irritable, I'm annoyed, or I'm phoning it in, I'm argumentative, or I'm not speaking up enough, I'm not influencing people the way that I want to. If they're saying anything from their own perspective,
right,
then I know we've got a shot here.
right,
Change can only happen when people take personal responsibility for changing their own behaviors. So it would be very easy for us, all of us, to say, you know, the people in our government really should be more empathetic. It's a lot harder for us to look in the mirror and say, how can I be more empathetic? Which was a journey I had to go on when I became a coach. And coaching is not just a thing you do. It really is a thing you become. I went through a year-long certification program, and in that time, I had to look at how I was showing up in the world, my own self-awareness, my own blind spots, and even my own limitations around empathy, which was incredibly humbling because I had spent the past 10 years talking about empathy ad nauseum, talking about how everyone has to have it, and that's the problem with business today, and I had to look at how I was not being more empathetic. And that has been a journey. And I still have limitations, but it has shifted tremendously in my ability to do this work alongside other people. And that is a huge part of why in these dimensions, the first one is being. There
right.
is no empathy for others without empathy for ourselves. There is no awareness of others without first having awareness of ourselves. And I love that it's positioned this way. I would never get behind a framework and want to associate with myself with it in any way if that was not the cornerstone of it.
And I love that because so to me, it's interesting because you know, several ways that resonates. And again, I guess what I retracted was looking at these one by one, only because we're starting with number one, and we will. But getting feedback, thinking about it, and then thinking about the global south for a second made me realize. So I feel like I love this framework, and it resonates for me as a Western white person, as someone with my background and the people I know in the world. But I do feel like it's possible that is a very much of a luxury to be able to start with what I think about in the world. Like, so for example, one way I know this is when I started teaching at Brandeis, and I've taught at various universities, but what I loved about teaching at Brandeis, the training they gave me was a course in feedback, giving and getting. Getting was not as easy, like you're saying, as I thought it would be. I'm like, oh, I have empathy. I raised 3 kids. I've done this. I've done that. Sure. But then you start hearing it and I'm like, no, I don't see it that way. And then you're like, yeah, no, I better try to see it that way. So
Yes.
I understand that. And I guess I'm wondering about the order of this as a privileged point of view, and the love that it's going to go to Costa Rica, and that I did see, I don't know if I pronounced Natasha's name correctly, did actually give us a link to that in, it does look like Costa Rica. Because like, let's say you don't have the luxury of as much time, or I just know, thinking about this educationally, where, you know, so I have a master's degree. Do I want a PhD? Yes. Did I get one? No. Am I thinking about getting one again? Yes. Will I? Probably no. I get that little luxury of walking through my head and even making that choice. But I know some people in the global south who are struggling to just get an undergraduate degree. You know, like, it's not like, oh, yeah, you'll figure it out. Oh, and so when you're dealing with something more present, like whatever it is, whatever the struggle is, sometimes, although as I'm saying it, I'm thinking what you may say is yes, but we do have to start by calming ourselves down and all of that. But let's say you got to deal with something urgently. Sometimes maybe 4 might be the one you do first. I'm just like, so it's an interesting. I don't know, and I guess we'll sort of in a few minutes open this up to everybody. But those of you who are from, yeah, there we go. Okay, there we go. Thank you, Natasha. So she says that some of her students don't have things to eat sometimes. So where are you from, if you could tell us? And we will open to live conversation in a few minutes. But okay, let's say you have a student who doesn't have something to eat. So thinking, she's only in Texas. Okay, well, I'm not surprised. Sorry, not gotta obey my own code of conduct. But that all being said, let's say you have a student, or it's you, who doesn't have enough to eat. So the relationship to yourself is emergency. It's
Yes.
like
emergency. You're bringing up a really important point here, and there's 2 things that come to mind for me around this. One is that this needs to be a framework, to me, is an indication of how far away some of us have gotten from our true nature. I would argue that even people who don't know where their next meal is going to come from, possess these qualities already more innately than those of us with privilege do. And I'm not putting quotes around my privilege because I know how privileged I am, but there is also a huge disconnection from reality, and a disconnection from nature, and a disconnection from ourselves that comes with that privilege. There are huge costs to that privilege as well. And the cost is our own humanity. Right. So there are many ways in which I would say a student who is struggling to find their next meal does not need this framework and does not need to make it a priority in their lives. The intent is for those of us with access and with influence to take the work on ourselves, to be committed to the work, to be doing the work internally, hence doing that inner work ourselves, so that we can lead from this place where we encourage others who are decision makers, who we have influence over, to find their way to commit to this as well. That's the goal, because it is not the starving child that is getting in the way of our progress to the SDGs.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say that at all.
Right? I know no, you don't.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yes.
This isn't their responsibility. It's ours, right? And so we need to be taking it on ourselves so that we can live it. So we're then in a much more honest, authentic position to be offering it to someone else who we may get access to, who has greater power than we do. And we all have a lot of power in this proverbial room, but we also have access to people who have way more power than we do. And if we are able to lead from a place where we are embodied in these skills and qualities, and we can represent them in the way that we move through the world, then it becomes contagious. And then the leaders who we need to reach, who are the ones that are making business decisions that are impeding our progress. They're making business decisions that have gotten us into this problem in the first place. It always frustrates me when we try to talk about climate change, for instance, and we say, oh, well, everyone should just recycle. There is no amount of personal responsibility that an individual at home can take that could ever outweigh the harm that corporations are causing. So it's the leaders of these corporations and large government agencies that are enabling them to change themselves. And that's a tall order. So it bears the question of, is any of this possible? I don't know if it's possible, but I have hope because I see who comes to me for support. And the people that come to me that get it and that want to make the change. And they may not be using SDGs as their framework in their mind. They may not be thinking of themselves as part of a movement in that way, but they get that they're in a position of power and they want to use that as a force for good. They want to use their business as a force for good, and they know that they have to start with themselves. They come to my doorstep. So I have hope that change is possible.
I mean, I agree with you. So I just want to unpack a few things. But first of all, starting from the back and working my way to earlier comments, I feel like there is hope because of also what I see, and you know, I have a foot in the academy teaching at Brandeis, and then I also have a foot in the industry with consulting, and World Usability Day spans both.
You are a busy person.
Yes, absolutely. But I love it. So the thing is though, there are so many places and so many pockets, and that's what this speaker series is really trying to shine a light on, is the different ways that the different collectives we are work together. And so, you know, one of the earliest ones of this we did was from Jordan, and it was UX through Arabic guys. And we had someone from every single Arab country and Israel and a lot of Europe on the phone. And yes, it was a navigation, but it was great. It was great. And then we did the same thing with Kyiv, and we had a lot of designers. And was there someone stuck in Moscow? Yes, but they came and it was great.
That is incredible.
We can do it. I know it because I've seen it. And working my way backwards, just listening to the way you describe this, and I'm going to just channel my grandmother for a minute, makes me verklempt. Like, you put everything together in one, I'm going to even cry, but I won't. But so you put 1 through 5 together in one thought, basically, which was what was so moving and inspiring to me. And that's where I think you and I connect, right? So it's like, what can we do on the ground? What can we do online? What can we do? What can we just do as a person? You know, and I just feel like my responsibility as a human being, and okay, yeah, I have 3 grown kids, and I imagine one day I'll be a grandmother. I don't know, but like generations, I want who comes after us to exist, start with that, but also that you know, that they can look back and see that, yes, there's hope, because some of us were doing this anyway. We're doing this. And if we look at all the struggles that this planet has been through, we got to the other side because people, say, resisted bad things that were happening and worked on the ground and like had gardens around their house to eat and like whatever they could do. And we still are all here. And, you know, whatever it is. So that being said, I do think, you know, kind of hits on my philosophy of really everything is UX. And you were sort of saying that too, like experience and all of that. But let's see, I don't know if you had anything to say about all those. I'm going to look at my own.
That was always my philosophy.
Yeah.
You know, I started a blog in 2008, and I was writing about my very broad view of user experience. Right. And, you know, I remember I wrote a post early on, like the UX of a staircase. Right. How many times have you walked up the stairs and been like, these stairs are too shallow. It actually hurts when they're too shallow. Or, oh my gosh, I have to take such a big step. Or there isn't a handrail, or, you know, they're slippery, or what, you know, I was just. And then we have landings, right? We have landings every, you know, few steps, and that landing is a place to rest. And there is a user experience of everything. And it is, I think, somewhat circumstantial that those of us here who have done this work and who do this work professionally happen to be applying it to technology. I think we're just taking the humanity that we have naturally within us, and we're looking around and saying, where is this work most needed? I'm of the time in which I was born, and technology is the biggest driving force of our evolution right now. So, okay, I might as well apply this to technology. But that's why, to me, UX and coaching and all of it, it's all the same thing.
Right.
It is about creating uplifting, meaningful, purposeful, fun, delightful experiences. That's all any of us want out of this life. We want to be healthy. We want to be happy. We want to be connected. We want to have love. We want to have meaning. We want to contribute, right? We have another framework that I'm going to name here because it's very personal to me. I use it a lot in my coaching, and a lot of these same skills or needs are contained within here, is called nonviolent communication. I'm
Ooh.
curious if anyone here has heard of NVC, as it's everything's an acronym, right? Nonviolent communication is essentially a framework that says all needs are universal. We all know what it means to need love. We all know what it means to need connection, no matter where we're from. Now, we may have different cultures that prioritize those values differently. And we, and so we could have some disagreements on what's more important. But really, the issue is around the strategies that we're utilizing to get those needs met. And that's where the conflict arises. And so much of the conflict that we see in our global society today are on strategies that are completely ineffective. And what we do as UX practitioners is we come in and we say, you might want to define the problem before you devise the solution. Turns out you don't actually know what the problem is. So we got to spend some time observing people using the thing. And then we're going to see what isn't working. And then once we have that clarity, from there, we can actually design a solution that has efficacy, that is actually going to meet your business objective because it meets the need for your target audience. It's not rocket science, people, but that's no different than saying, we have global challenges. We have places all around the world that don't have clean water. Meanwhile, there are people where I live that turn on the water and don't think twice about it. That is not a matter of not having the science or not having the technology to deliver clean water to people's glasses and to their cleaning and to their clothes and all the places where, and to their farming and all the places where that water is so needed. We have the science, we have the technology. What we have is a people problem that is getting in the way of all of that science and technology being universally available.
So I do want to push, I want to push a little.
Yes, please.
The people problem. So you tapped into something that I've written about and is in my book, which is right over there. And
second edition.
Sorry, we all do our little like minute of, self-promotion, starting with number one. But so what I noticed, so I went to graduate school at MIT, right? And to me, and that was after going to art school. So besides having a terrible brain cramp the entire, and others, what I came to realize was that at a place like MIT, how does things get developed? It's technology driven. It's like, hey, look what I can invent. I'm going to invent it. And that's that, right? And what you were talking about a little bit is what I call market driven. And that is, what can we sell? So I reject both of those approaches in favor of what I call user-centered design, but it's also what you're talking about. And it's also what we are talking about right now, which is, what problem are we solving? And okay, it's not like everything needs to be about solving a problem, but at the end of the day, why put our energy into it when the world's on fire? Why not work on this
correct
problems? And then we will discover that joy and engagement and delight and all the things we have to have come faster,
yes,
easier.
yes.
And so that all being said, and then I think I want to in about 5 minutes just like open this to a actual conversation in which people raise their hands and I call on you and we'll all talk. Or you can continue putting things in the chat as you are. But the question that I just want to focus on for a few minutes, Whitney, you and I, is so both of us have shifted in various ways. Like I don't do as much like full-time corporate work because of some of the reasons you also mentioned. I'm doing teaching because of some of the, but at the end of the day, I personally still want to get our technology development human-centered, because I think if we don't do that, I don't see how we fix things. And so that's why, to me, I focus on this right away. But it is the same. Like if we generalize the problem, it is the same. It isn't just the technology needs to be fixed. It's we need to refocus on the people on the planet, the species, all of our, ecosystems. And I don't just mean that like everyone should go and forest bathe. I mean, we should think about this, because what's happening with these things that are mini computers, by the way, this is definitely not a phone, personally, in my opinion. We are mining our planet so that we each get one of these every 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
Okay, so serious problems that will not be
Yes.
solved by us getting a new one of these every 2 or 3 years. So to me, what can we do? Like, I'm doing this, you're doing your things, but like, what else can we do? Like, let's start you and I, and then we can open to whoever else wants to join. What are your thoughts?
So I am a big, big, big believer in the mantra of think global, act local.
Yeah,
I think that it is terrifying and overwhelming and despairing to be too focused on all the problems that are going on globally. Opening up the news, I mean, you don't open it up. Most people get the notifications. I've turned off notifications. I find that to be much healthier. I opt in when I am emotionally available and I have space to engage with what is happening in the rest of the world. I find that better for my mental health.
same.
But when I go there and I see, it's deeply depressing. Everything is depressing. And it's framed in such a way that it's causing more division and more conflict and more anxiety. So I like to be informed, but I don't want to be obsessed, because it gets me to a place of being so depressed and hopeless. And as Natasha said a moment ago, which I really appreciate, hope is my most important trait. If I don't have hope, I can't do my job. Not to mention, if I don't have hope, I can't get out of bed in
Same.
right? So, and I don't always have it. There are days when this world is hard to face.
Yep.
And we've been through a really tough last 4 years globally. And we were going through in the US a tough 4 or 5 years before that. And it's been prolonged. There has been a lot of trauma. There's been tremendous stress. So I feel passionately that we have to be aware of all that, but not obsessed with it, and focus our energy inward to where we are. That is the community that you're in, the neighborhood that you're in, the family that you are in. It might be that the only thing you can influence is your own family. That alone, I know some of us, I can't, but that in and of itself is a huge ripple effect out into the world. If you think about, I think there's some number of, we have, what is it, the Dunn number or something like that, 150 tight connections each. We all associate with something like 150 people in an intimate way in our day-to-day lives. Many of us are on Zooms with people, across our companies or organizations, where there's thousands of different people that we're interacting with, in email, group emails and Slack and meetings and offsites and all this. we have tremendous influence. So if the only person that you are helping to change their behavior is someone in your family, that is a whole other set of people that they are then influencing that you would otherwise never have access to. It's hard to think about just how quickly this all scales because our brains aren't really designed to understand the scale of the whole world. We have the technology now that enables us to connect with the whole world, but our brains have not caught up in really being able to visualize just how many billions of people we're talking about here. And so where it comes to our responsibility is affecting the people that no one else can affect the way we can. Not like, I'm going to take it upon myself to impact the CEO when I'm 6 levels below the CEO. That's not the point of this framework or this conversation. It's to say, who do I have access to where I can notice, because I'm doing the work on myself, where they have strengths and where there are some things that they could be working on, and what inroads might I have to show them the framework that is supporting me in my personal development so that perhaps they can opt into pursuing this for themselves. I would can't even measure the number of times that people have come to me for coaching because they said, my partner worked with a coach and it was amazing for them, or my boss has a coach and I want to be in that role one day, so I wanted to see what this coaching thing was all about, or just the nature of, or what's it called, the proximity principle.
Yeah.
If you are working on yourself, the people that you are closest to are the people that you have the greatest impact on. And I think that's so much more important to think about. So for me, there's my partner, Frederick, who is a sustainability consultant, and he was the one that found the IDGs, because for years we've been looking for ways that we can bring our work together. How do we marry this, sustainability and coaching thing? I don't know. And then he was like, look at this link I just found. And we were like, wait a minute, it's all about sustainability and inner work this as well. And then I'm also on the board of directors of a local nonprofit in my town, relatively small but very mighty organization, where they've been around since 1985. The majority of the people who are involved in bringing this organization into being have been in the town for a long time, and there's certainly a diversity of opinions and perspectives, but there's more homogeneity, is that how you say the word, in their culture and in their backgrounds. And I wasn't raised here, and I have a different family background, and I have a different style, and I have a different perspective and life experience, and I'm bringing a lot of these principles and values into that organization to do whatever I can to move the needle the smallest bit in my town where I live, because that's my community and I want it to reflect my values. So that's what we're talking about here. We're not saying you've got, storm the doors of the C-suite tomorrow. I mean, if you can, go for it. I back you. And if you want me cheering you on, I'm all for that. But it is so much more about what is in your backyard that you have access to influence.
And I love that, because just for a second to frame it. So I first heard the term think globally, act locally when Earth Day got started, which I was alive. I was very young, but I was alive. And World Usability Day was actually modeled after Earth Day. And so that is definitely our motto. And I try to live my life that way. And it's interesting the way first of all, Whitney, I can see why you're a good coach. Like already, I can tell just from this.
Oh, that's very sweet.
And I have been. That's also been my sort of experience. I have 3 grown sons, and my parents are still alive at 87 and 93, and I have siblings nearby, and it's a full. Even though as a single mother raising them, like now it's a full life, and I feel free to do whatever I want. But But at the end of the day, you know, caring for them. And then I see that and in my sons, where one is making movies and one is a tech guy, and he's our webmaster for World Usability Day. And then my youngest son is a reporter at the Washington Post, you know, and I've had these conversations with all three, like, what are we doing to make, you know, because imagine being my child. I'm always like, what are you doing to make the world better? They're all fine. They're on board. But I see the ripple out effect in various ways. I see now I have probably 2 or probably eventually 3 daughters that I didn't have before, and just seeing where, you know, different worlds and rippling out. And then we have something, and I think they have this in Portland, Maine also. We have something called a Freege, which is FREEDGE. It's actually a food pantry, but it's open 24/7. And the idea is that people, you know, donate what they have, and then people who, you know, are food insecure can come and take out a day's worth. And so my synagogue, you know, picks a couple of days a month, and we do that. And then sometimes if I have stuff that I'm like, I'll drive it over and drop it off. And it's both amazingly humbling experience and also extremely difficult. And it's kind of what you were talking about, where I at first thought I should do it because I like often feel like I'm a super privileged person, and like I feel like that's the, you know, like if I'm doing nothing else, I could do that. But then just exposing myself to people who are not as privileged is amazingly humbling. And then I feel like it, you know, it was like because some of my friends are doing it, and then I heard about it, and then I'm doing it. So
yeah, exactly.
I like that idea, and that totally matches with these 5, the framework, because it is like all of that together. So I'm happy to keep chatting with you, and I see that there's a bunch of comments in the chat, but if anyone wants to turn on their camera and be involved in the conversation live, this would be the time, and I strongly encourage you to. Again, no pressure. Whitney and I can certainly keep going for the next 23 minutes.
No, that's fine. If anyone has a question or a comment, doesn't have to be a question for me or for us. I would love to hear perspectives on any of this.
Right. I see one. I'll just riff on it. And then Natasha, I know you're on your phone, so I don't know, but if you want to even chat. So you're talking about planned obsolescence, and I am, having worked like for so many big companies, as one of my kids says, I'm over it, right? Like you heard me talking about this, right? But it's even worse. Like we're actually in late stage capitalism. I believe that's what's pushing this.
Yes.
And what is late stage capitalism? And please correct me if someone thinks they have more on this, but you know, basically we're selling every experience we have, right? And everything's for sale. And I think that's why we have to have planned obsolescence, because we have to grow. We have to grow our companies, and we have to grow, and we have to climb the ladder, and we can't just be okay where we are. So I think that's part of the problem. And let's see, first of all, we'll get back to you, Natasha, you've got a lot. So we're going to get back to that one about the inner development goals. And Tanvi, if I got that right, please feel free. Go ahead.
Awesome.
Tanvi.
Yeah, just give me a second. I will quickly put on.
Okay, I can't quite hear you, but let's see.
Yeah, your volume is a little low.
Okay. Is it any better?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, much
Yeah,
better.
go ahead. All right. And then if anyone else wants to talk, they could raise their hand, but also it's okay. Keep going. Go ahead. Over to you, Tanvi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Firstly, Elizabeth, Whitney, thank you so much for sharing like what all knowledge you guys have occupied all over, and really happy because I am attending your sessions for the second year this time. So my question is, so I come from Mumbai, India. So my question is because I really understand the overall concept of World Usability Day. At least it's giving us that channel to think towards things, which we otherwise, we don't know we should even think. It's not that somebody doesn't want to think about something good. It's just that we don't know that is also a possible way. So for a person or an individual or, maybe a firm or a corporate who wants to, who are first timers, into like, participating or joining the World Usability initiatives, what are the key things we should keep in mind? Because, at the very first time when I read about our World Usability Day, it's connected with United Nations goals. So it looked like, kind of ocean of things that I felt, am I like even fit enough to think about it? Like, am I even in the right channel? Is it something that I can do, or like, what is it? So, but especially
Absolutely.
thank you so much for these sessions. It is really like making things very clear. So just give us some tips, like as first timers, what should be our mindset? And how do we make us confident enough that, it's okay to like, join these sessions, like understand more and more, and like start participating. For example, you also mentioned about a design challenge. So as a like individual, if like, in whichever way, how can I start like getting into it?
I love it. Okay.
that.
So first of all, this is not an organization that you have to apply to. You don't even need a degree. The idea with this is we are a community of like-minded people who are trying to really improve the world through our knowledge of technology. But as you can see, it's not really that, right? And so everyone is welcome. And the fact that you're here is wonderful. And please, one thing I want to note, if anyone feels inadequate or feel like they have an imposter syndrome, just as a sidebar, I don't believe in imposter syndrome. Excuse it, for any white man that's on the phone, this is not you, but I believe the patriarchy invented the imposter syndrome. And I'm pretty sure that was to make the people who weren't white men, and again, not you guys on the phone or my sons, but that we were not enough, that we could be ourselves, but not enough, or that maybe we weren't fit to fit in some mold that someone else defined for us. And so I completely reject that. I don't think it exists. I think what exists, and I've seen it in my own lifetime, is that I believed them. I believed them when they said I was an imposter, or that I didn't know what I was talking about, because maybe I confused them or something else. I don't know. I trigger them, whatever it is. That's their problem. That's not my problem. I am not an imposter because I am me. Nobody else can be me. So how can I be an imposter if I'm being myself? So that's my first point about that. And that's why World Usability Day exists. And so initially we were looking at Earth Day because we felt like Earth Day got the message out around the world, but Earth Day didn't solve climate change. So I mean, Earth Day came out in 1970 after Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring, which is about DDT killing the birds, killing the bees, killing the birds, killing us. And 2 million students and members of US Congress marched on the United Nations in 1970 in April and created Earth Day. And then because I believe, and see, this is why this is a moment in time, because at the time, the campuses in the United States in 1970 were raging with protests against the Vietnam War, and Richard Nixon needed a win. He started the EPA because of that march on the United Nations. So I thought that's what we need, but I don't know what. So, and also that didn't work, right? Because we're still where we are. It's not that it was a bad idea, but it didn't get where we need to be. So we came up with the day, World Usability Day, but also then we started doing these other things like this speaker series. So Tanvi, if you have an idea for a speaker series, please just reach out to me if you have other people that you want to do it with, and we'll do this. You and I can do this. Like with Whitney, we did a Fireside Chat because I'm not mentoring Whitney, but sometimes I'll mentor someone and I'll help them put together a presentation, then we'll do it. So that is available. And then the design challenge was to come, and that was actually started at the end of 2019. And it was a little rough getting that going, but the idea was and is that it's an opportunity for anyone to get recognition for their work. So like I teach graduate school, and some of the members of the jury teach graduate school, and they encourage their students to apply. But I'm real proud that last year we had a design agency in Tel Aviv win second place for an app they developed for the Israeli rail system. And I have nothing to do with the judging or any of that. So this happened because of the value of their work. And they had never, the thing with the design challenge is you get, the initial, you sort of build an app based on like some research you've done. And then you not just get the award at the HCI International Conference, but you get the opportunity to publish a paper about what you wrote in a Springer journal, which is very prestigious. So what was amazing is this Israeli had never written a research paper. He was a designer. And so he wrote a research paper and suddenly he went, oh, there's value in that. So anyone can do it and it's for everybody. And so I don't want, anyone to feel inadequate. So that's all that about World Usability Day, but I don't know if
I was hoping to add something to that.
I was just going to say, maybe you have something, Whitney, that's bigger.
I literally would not have a career if it were not for community.
Yeah.
I would not have been able to get where I am to do what I do, to make a living at it, had I not sought out places where people who do what I do are gathering together. And so Tanvi, for anyone who who's like, what is this World Usability Day thing and why should I attend it and what am I going to get out of it? It's because what we are attempting to do in our work is so big and so important, and it is impossible to do it alone. There is self-responsibility that we take, and there are things that we have to individually contribute, but it is a movement. And the only way that we make progress is together. So when an opportunity like this or any of the speaker series or attending the World Usability Day events or anything comes up, we have to take it. We have to make the time in our day away from what would be, business as usual or doing the tasks we've been assigned or whatever, because you never know what you might hear, who you might meet, what you might realize that then propels you to the next step and the next step and the next step and the next step. We are energy beings and we cannot produce all of our own energy. We feed off of each other. And so I would, if I weren't doing this today, I would be in my armchair right over there, and I would be on the phone with clients, giving them energy and receiving energy back. And instead, I'm here giving energy and receiving energy back. And that is what we do. When I go for a walk later and I'm, looking at the trees and I'm smelling the freshly cut grass and feeling the sun on my face, I'm receiving energy so that I have more to give. It's just that cycle. We are part of nature. Coming together like this is part of that. We are gathering beings as humans. And we have to encourage one another to attend things that we don't entirely understand. It's a leap of faith that you are here because this was a topic that seemingly maybe this isn't related to UX, but here Elizabeth is telling us that World Usability Day was modeled off of Earth Day. So, and it's so innate. It's in the DNA of this organization and this global movement that it's about sustainability. It's about the planet. So of course the inner development goals are relevant. So it's all interrelated. And the more we can reveal that connective tissue to one another, the more we understand what the true importance of our work is. Without it, it seems like I'm creating an app. I'm adding a new feature. I'm making sure that it works for this person. I'm testing that functionality. It could seem very narrow. what experiences like this help us see, wait a minute, there is this invisible web connecting me to everything else, and I can feed off of that, and I can feed into it, and that is how we succeed. That's how we thrive. That's how we evolve, and we ultimately reach these lofty goals that we've set for ourselves.
Such a delight to talk to me.
Oh, you're so sweet. Ditto.
Yeah. So have you heard of interstitium? Interstitium, I think it's called. It's a new Did you wave your head, Tanvi? Have you heard about it? So what it is there is a tissue that connects everything in our body, and that's what it's called. I'll have to look it up in a sec. The question in the world of science and cancer was how does cancer spread from one part of the body to the other? And that's how they discovered this interstitium. And it is what they used to just think was part of each organ, and it turns out it's an organ in itself, and it's in the body, and it holds everything together. And it's literally like, when you look at the picture, it's like little strings that they didn't think counted, but they are all over the body. And so that, I feel like, is kind of what you're talking about in the world, because it's not obviously just in the body, it's on the planet. And we are all connected, whether we like it or not.
Exactly.
Just like everything inside of our body is. And I'm always I was sort of raised thinking holistically, and I guess spending, I used to go hiking in the mountains and when I was younger, leading trips of kids and for weeks. And to me, this was an obvious aha moment. I remember thinking, imposter syndrome. You guys just discovered this? Like, I'm sorry to seem like such a arrogant, but I'm like, seriously? This is new information. Because if you spend time in the woods, everything is connected. Like, and then I heard recently the trees have been talking to each other. And I'm like, no surprise.
Not just connected, but interdependent.
Yes. See, yes, that's what I mean.
US white culture would like us to think that independence is the most important value.
Right.
When it is such a myth. There is no such thing that survives, that is independent. We are interdependent.
100%.
And all of life is interdependent. And we are animals, FYI. Sorry to break the news to everybody, but we too are animals.
Yep.
And we are producing and consuming things that other beings need. And it is our job to all take care of each other. So I love what you're saying, and I'm in total agreement. And it just feels so vital in this moment.
Yeah.
I mean, what more could we go through before we wake up and say, we've got to do something? And again, I really don't want it to sound as if I'm suggesting that where you work, if it's not climate oriented or SDG oriented, that's like the wrong job or something. It's
right.
If you're compelled to move into something that's more aligned with your mission and your values, I love that. I support that all day. But quite frankly, it's the places that aren't already paying attention that need the most help.
Right.
And and are going to be the biggest challenges for us to undertake. We can carve out little spaces wherever we are to move the needle ever so slightly.
Yeah. And actually, I agree, because I want to note, I had a period of my life when I was a single mother. And to be honest with you, I didn't have the luxury of saying, I don't really want to do that work when they're offering me this much money and I get benefits. And sometimes you just got to take the job. Maybe it's not your perfect, altruistic.
Exactly.
And you do it. And I did it. I'm certainly happy I did. And you learn a lot, and you find, like you're saying, Whitney, you find a place in that space where you can do things, and so it's like one foot in front of the other, and it's like us all being connected, and there's just lots and lots of different ways. So I know Joanna put in a question about.
Yep, and I am going to provide some resources for Joanna right now. Hi, Joanna. So glad that you're asking this question.
Yeah, and I have one also. So go
So
ahead.
there are several that I am going to post right now. One of them is an organization called On Deck that matches, people with
I never saw that.
startups basically, and they have a climate tech fellowship. So I want you to know about that. Another organization is called Terra.do, which is climate education for people in our field. Another is called, it's a community, a really active, wonderful community called Climate Designers. That's one. There's also a bunch of jobs in something called Climate Base.
Right. That one I've seen.
And then there is workonclimate.org. And then there's a climate design. There's another climate design organization that I know about. I'll think of it as we're going. Elizabeth, do you know of others as well?
Right, sustainableuxnetwork.com. I just put that in
Oh,
there.
yes. Sustainable UX is also a great organization. I actually spoke to them about the nonviolent communication. So.
Oh yeah, no, they're fabulous. We've been trying to think of a project we could do for World Usability Day, but we haven't quite figured it out. We had this great brainstorm and we thought.
So there's many things here, but Joanna, you might want to start with climate designers, because that's an organization or a community of people who are asking this question of like, how do I find jobs that are mission focused where there is still a mature enough UX practice that it's worth my while? Because we're not necessarily suggesting that you have to be, a UX team of one where you go because you really want to work on that mission or something. So they're going to be a great resource. I hope that helps.
Thank you you really have a lot of resources, which is also.
That is part of my job.
Yeah, no, obviously as a coach.
And I'm so fortunate because I get to collect all of the resources that my clients give me. And then it makes me look smart, but I'm just the repository for it all. So
I hear you. So you got the humility going too. That's nice.
Oh, trust me, coaching teaches you humility.
Yes.
It's a job requirement.
I was going to say teaching also, I feel like.
Oh, I'm sure.
Especially
when you're standing in front of those students, there's plenty of humility required.
And I am being told about a new app or something that I never heard of before. I kind of love that though, because how else am I going to find out?
I know. I get taught things by my clients all the time. And they're inside of so many different organizations that I would otherwise never have any visibility into or access to. And then it gives me insight that I can offer to somebody else. And again, interdependence here. And this is a great example of it. Someone thinks I need coaching. I'm going to go find a coach. We enter into an engagement that's one-on-one. It seems like it's the opposite of scale, right? I have people ask me all the time, oh, why don't you scale your business? I'm doing something one-on-one. In that, I am weaving together experiences of another person and another person and another organization and another leader and another agency and another this. I happen to be the hub of that, but there is so much interdependence that happens across my clients that seemingly are never interacting with one another, but they are through me.
Right.
All interdependence. There's no such thing of non-interdependence. It just doesn't exist.
Well, I love that because we all sort of interact anyway. The whole thing about independence, I do think, is based on this other philosophy that has led us to late stage capitalism that isn't so helpful. And scaling is good and necessary for certain things, but sort of bringing us back full circle, and we only have a minute left. I mean, the whole idea that everything has to grow all the time is also it's not natural, because we tend to also, why do we have to, like, kids stop growing at a certain point. My dad, who's 93, used to be 4 or 5 inches shorter than me. Taller than me, and now he's an inch shorter. I'm telling you, like, not everything grows. So that whole notion is just nuts. But let's see, we kind of have 30 seconds. Whitney, would you like to say anything to close?
I'm just so grateful to you, Elizabeth, for the opportunity to have this conversation. I'm so grateful to everyone here for your time and your care. And I hope that something in here spoke to you and you can take a little piece of it. There was a question asked in the chat around how do we get involved? You can join a hub. I threw the link in the chat. You can join an existing hub. If when you go through them and you see that one doesn't exist, you can create a hub. There's also a survey that is currently open called the 1 question survey. It's a bit misleading because it's more than 1 question. It's one big question and then there's a lot of sub questions, but basically they're using it as an opportunity for the 3rd go round for people to contribute what they see as being the essential human qualities for leaders to possess to create change, so positive change. So you can contribute to that. There's a whole bunch of resources on the Interdevelopment Goals website. There's lots of ways to get involved. And if none of that works for you, but you're still curious, you're more than welcome to contact me at any time. I can put my info right here in the chat, and I will be happy to share a resource, connect you with the right person. I was so fortunate to attend this summit, and there were people from around the world there. So I now have quite a few people at the Interdevelopment Goals nonprofit and that are doing this work professionally to be a part of this movement around the world. So I can connect you with folks maybe in your region. Use me as a resource, please.
It's great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Whitney. And I learned a lot, which is why I love doing these things. And thank you to everyone for coming. And I will post this on our channel, and I'll, assuming you've signed up, you'll get an email saying it's there. And then contact, like Whitney said, her if you want, or if you want to know more about World Usability Day, contact me. And have a nice, I guess, rest of your day or night, depending on where you are. And thanks again. And let's keep the hope alive.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Yes. Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Take care. Bye.